Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Ottawa police ramping up for Canada Day as a new wave of demonstrations is expected. Plus, we tell you where all the local festivities are taking place this Canada Day. And have you seen Lila Smith? We speak with the family of the missing 13-year-old Edmonton girl.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. The family and friends of a missing 13-year-old Edmonton girl are making a desperate cry for anyone who may have seen her or have information on Lila Smith's whereabouts. Smith went missing last Friday when she got on her school bus to school, but hasn't been seen since. Robin Hansen is the family's spokesperson. She's been friends with the family for over 20 years, and she joins me now from outside of Lila's middle school, where Lila is a grade 8 student. Robin, thanks so much for joining me. Why don't you tell me about what's going on and what exactly happened?
On Friday morning, that would have been June 24th, Lila got on the school bus. Her mom saw her get on the school bus and later found out at the end of the day, when she didn't arrive at home, that actually Lila hadn't been at school all day. And that's the last that anyone has seen or heard from her, was when her mom put her on the school bus.
Okay, can you describe for us what Lila looks like and what she was wearing that day?
She's quite tall. She's 5'9", 110 pounds. She's beautiful. She has short brown hair, blue eyes, freckles. She's a child, but she just looks older than she is. And so I think that's sort of a difficulty, because people may not realize that she's a child. She was last wearing a white and blue hoodie with a black and white checkered pocket, ripped jeans, and black and white Converse sneakers. She also had her backpack with her that, to our knowledge, only contained her art supplies. She doesn't have her bank card or anything else with her.
I can't imagine what you're going through right now. How's the family holding up?
We're exhausted. We're sleep deprived. We're also just overwhelmed with the people who have stepped up, doing things like updating the map that's on that Facebook page so we can show people where people have already gone, so that we're not duplicating efforts and we can see where we do need to go. So it's just the incredible work everyone is doing, for both a girl people know and love and someone who they've never met before in their life, and they want to help. It's overwhelming.
Robin, thanks so much for joining us. Our prayers are with you and with Lila for a safe return home. Anyone who has information regarding Lila Smith's whereabouts is asked to contact the Edmonton Police Service at the number on your screen. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says police in Ottawa are taking their responsibility very seriously to keep people safe during Canada Day celebrations. That's as supporters of this past winter's Freedom Convoy protest promised that there will be a new wave of demonstrations through the summer starting this weekend. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is calling on everyone to be considerate and respect the law, and says he's disappointed protesters are returning to Ottawa. In other news, the Prime Minister ended his meeting with NATO military alliance leaders in Madrid by announcing more military aid for Ukraine. Trudeau says Canada is in the final stages of talks to supply Ukraine with up to 39 armored combat support vehicles to help it fight off Russia.
We have been working closely with the Ukrainians in our conversations directly with President Zelensky or our ministers with their counterparts to make sure we are responding to what their concrete needs are. And these exceptional cameras built in Canada that go in the drones have been incredibly useful in protecting Ukrainians and pushing back against Russia's illegal invasion. And the light armored vehicles that we will be sending over will be extremely effective as well. We're just glad to help, and we're going to continue to look and respond to things they need. We sent over heavy artillery and ammunition. We continue to deliver other things that they need. We will be there in response to how we can best help.
Trudeau says Canada will take part in the G20 summit expected to take place in Bali in November, even if Russian President Vladimir Putin goes too. Trudeau says he expects all G7 countries to take part, even if Russia remains a full-fledged member of the G20.
It's too important a conversation on the global economy. It's too important that we be there to counteract the voice and the lies that Russia will perhaps be putting forward. There's a number of months still to go before that, and anything can happen. It's very clear as well that business as usual will not be the order of the day at the G20, because the conversations we're having about the global economy and the crisis and the food insecurity and the fuel prices that people are dealing with at home and around the world are a direct consequence of Putin's illegitimate and unjustifiable decision to launch a war.
Air Canada made a late-night announcement that it's cutting its summer flight schedule by more than 15%. The move will see about 154 flights per day dropped from the airline's schedule, just as peak travel season is starting. Most domestic flights to Canada's busiest airports were delayed or canceled over the past week due to an overloaded international network. A New Brunswick analytics firm calculates that about 54% of flights to the 4 largest airports were bumped off schedule. The federal government is extending its border restriction measures for travelers entering Canada. Requirements for travelers arriving to Canada are expected to remain in effect until at least September 30th. All travelers must continue to use the ArriveCAN app.
The ArriveCAN has obviously been a very important tool during COVID-19 and remains important for those people that enter into Canada to identify whether they are appropriately vaccinated. But increasingly, ArriveCAN is also being used to facilitate and accelerate entrance into Canada through customs data entry, which in many cases makes it quite fast and quite efficient to enter into Canada using that particular tool, which has been developed for other purposes to make our customs system even more efficient.
In addition, the pause of mandatory random testing will continue at all airports until mid-July for travelers who qualify as fully vaccinated. The World Health Organization is reporting the number of new COVID-19 cases rose 18% worldwide in the last week. Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Theresa Tam and Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos are stressing the need for everyone to get up to date on their COVID vaccinations. Tam is warning we could see a resurgence of infections this fall and winter due to the Omicron subvariants BA4 and BA5.
As the SARS-CoV-2 virus continues to circulate worldwide and new variants emerge and spread, we must remain vigilant and prepare for resurgence in the weeks and months ahead.
Yesterday, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization advised provinces to prepare to offer another round of shots at people at increased risk of severe COVID-19, regardless of how many booster doses they've already received. As Alberta's United Conservative Party is looking to replace its leader, many are stepping up to put their name forward for the ballot. Former Wildrose leader Danielle Smith is one of them, but some UCP members may not be too forgiving from when she left the Conservative Party to cross the floor to the Wildrose Party. I had a chance to speak with Smith this week, and she says she made a mistake in doing that.
There's no question it was a mistake in 2015, and I ended up losing my nomination, and Jim Prentice ended up losing the election. I think people now can begin to see that part of what we were trying to do is to bring unity to the Conservative movement. I mean, we did it the wrong way, and the public wasn't ready for it at that time. But now I'm hearing is fear that the unity that we brought, that Jason Kenney and Brian Jean brought by bringing the party together is going to bust apart. I don't want to see that happen. I know Brian Jean doesn't want to see that happen. It's why both of us have jumped into this race, is that we want to keep this movement together. Both of us gave up an awful lot for unity, and I believe that the UCP project is one that's worth saving.
You can catch my full interview with Danielle Smith coming up after Business News. The Alberta government says a rebate program to help people manage high heating costs this winter will begin on October 1st. The natural gas rebate program was promised in the spring budget, but the province is clarifying that it will also be provided for other heating fuels such as propane, kerosene, and oil. The province says at least 1.6 million homes, farms, and businesses will receive the rebate, which will be applied directly to eligible customers' bills through March 31st. It's in addition to an electricity rebate program implemented this summer and the temporary removal of the provincial gasoline tax, which will be in place until at least September. Lethbridge police have charged 2 men with multiple offenses in connection with an assault Wednesday. Police responded to a report of a 19-year-old man being assaulted by 2 unknown males in the 2000 block of 2nd Avenue North. At approximately 4:15 p.m. on June 29th, the victim was approached by the men and asked for cigarettes. When he declined, they assaulted him. The subjects were located nearby and were taken into custody after a brief struggle with police. The victim sustained non-life-threatening injuries that did not require medical treatment. Charged were Kendall Sony Thomas Holloway, 36, who was released from custody with a scheduled court appearance on August 24th, and James Joseph Smith, 35, who remains in custody while awaiting a judicial interim release hearing. Some early morning gym goers had their workouts cut short today when employees evacuated the Fit for Less on 1st Avenue South in Lethbridge. One member told us she was in the middle of her workout when she was told it was a gas leak. But according to the gym's manager, it was a sewer problem.
Everyone had to leave the building. It was a little frustrating because I had to come to work, my workout clothes looking like this. But it's good to know that their top priority is the safety of everyone using their facilities.
We reached out to Fit for Less's corporate communications department and they responded with this statement, quote, "We became aware of a gas smell at our Lethbridge location this morning. Out of precaution, all members immediately evacuated the facility. An investigation determined that this was a sewage issue and we are reviewing the necessary repairs. Upon determining that it was safe to resume operations, we reopened the club." The long weekend is nearly upon us, and that means it's almost time to get out and enjoy some family fun for Canada Day. The Interfaith Food Bank Society of Lethbridge is hosting a Canada Day celebration at Galt Gardens Friday. Danielle McIntyre, the executive director of the food bank, says it'll be nice to get back to doing in-person events for Canada Day once again, and there are a variety of unique things to choose from during the day.
So we're super excited to be back in Galt Gardens for Canada Day, and we are starting out the day with a charity breakfast. So we have a recommendation of $2, but bring what you can, and you will receive a breakfast sandwich, fresh fruit, and coffee and juice. Throughout the entire day, we have a community stage with entertainers. Domesticated Divers has partnered with us, and they'll be running an outdoor market under the pergola. LeBaron's Car Club will be running a car show in the park as well from 9 until 3:30. And then we also have food trucks in the afternoon, and even downtown BRZ is coming along with a free picnic in the park.
And it's going to be a warm one tomorrow with a high of 27 degrees and a chance of showers. The food bank is also accepting donations of water bottles to give out during the hot weather to those in need. Meanwhile, the city of Lethbridge is planning a host of activities at Henderson Lake for Canada's birthday.
Starts at noon with our main stage. We have 25 food vendors and a boatload of different kids activities throughout the day. Face painting and children's plays, bouncy houses, you name it, you can probably find it over there. Everything is open to the general public and free and accessible. We will be there till 11 o'clock when the fireworks will kick off.
Can't wait for that. Sarah Burton with the city's Canada Day Committee Chair adds that the best spot to view the fireworks is anywhere along the lake shore, the lake shoreline rather. Sometimes one person's junk is another's treasure. That's definitely the case for a new play called The Junk Show, which is being put on in Galt Gardens in Lethbridge. The group calling themselves Hootenanny are heading up the production. Video journalist Micah Quinn has more on the captivating entertainment in the park.
The theatrical group called Hootenanny was created 4 years ago and employs University of Lethbridge drama students to be actors, stage managers, as well as costume, set, prop, and sound designers. The play is called The Junk Show and features 2 characters named Dusty and Rusty.
They are kind of eternally working, sorting junk out into piles of so good and no good. And they get distracted very easily, and they often go into playtime rituals where they end up in medieval times or underwater or in outer space. But slowly as they're sorting the piles from so good to no good, strange things start happening with some of the junk. and it eventually turns into a creature. And the lesson that they're learning from this is that everything and everyone has worth.
The junk show was born out of a trip to a place called Bin Diver, just outside of Calgary.
And it's a curated junkyard. So there's some would call it trash, some would call it treasure, that's in this giant Quonset, and you can go there and you can just grab stuff that you want to make art out of. So I filled a truck full of junk and I brought it back to rehearsals and I dumped it on the floor on the first day and was just like, what should we make a play about that's inspired by this junk? So the stuff led to all of our ideas through it.
The group has also had to navigate the tough challenges of performing during and after the pandemic.
It's overwhelming at times, or can be, just because we're not used to so many people and being so close to people all the time. However, it's been wonderful to get to experience not only COVID theater in Hootenanny as well as not COVID theater with Hootenanny.
For more information on Hootenanny and when they perform, you can visit the group's Facebook page. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. What a creative idea for that play. Well, you might be thinking about hitting up a round of golf this long weekend, and anyone who's ever played it knows that the sport can be a lot of fun and quite frustrating, especially when dealing with that legendary Lethbridge wind. Well, I caught up with Eric Porter, PGA of Canada head pro at the Lethbridge Country Club, who offered tips when golfing in a strong wind.
If we were trying to hit a low golf shot or in the wind, one thing we definitely recommend is club one to two clubs up. And then simply just by placing the ball position back in the stance, what's going to happen is the club's going to hit the ground. We're going to make a shorter follow through, and we're going to be able to hit the ball on a lower trajectory so the wind won't have as much factor. And like I said, definitely club up. A lot of golfers, when it is windy, the biggest mistake that most amateur golfers make is they get up there and, well, the wind's blowing in my face, I'm just going to swing harder. That's the worst thing you could do. You create more spin on the ball, and the wind is going to prevent more curvature.
Eric will have more golfing tips coming up in the second half of our program. And if you are planning to hit the links, it should be a decent weekend for it. I'll have all the weather details coming up for you right after this short break. Welcome back. Well, it looks like Canada Day could be a little wetter than we originally expected. Looks like a chance of showers this evening with a risk of a thunderstorm. Into Friday, Canada Day, we're looking at sunshine in the morning, then a mix of sun and cloud in the afternoon. By the afternoon, we could be seeing that chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm. But look at that temperature, going to be nice and warm, 27 degrees. Friday evening, also a chance of showers right in time for those fireworks. So fingers crossed that it will remain clear skies for Friday. 24 degrees on Saturday with a mix of sun and cloud. That's rain should be coming back on a Sunday with a high of 18 degrees. Only 22 on Monday with mainly cloudy skies, and then a mix of sun and cloud for Tuesday and Wednesday with highs of 22 and then 25 for Wednesday. So yeah, we needed that sunshine for Canada Day for sure. Average high for this time of year, 24 degrees, average low 10. 36 was our high temperature on this day back in 1944, and in 1968 we had our lowest, which was 5 degrees. 5:27 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sunset this evening, 9:43 p.m., giving us 16 hours and 16 minutes of daylight, just like yesterday. So the days are kind of evening out a little bit. On the west coast tomorrow, we're looking at mainly sunny skies in Victoria, 21 the high, pretty windy in the Juan de Fuca Strait. As per usual, 22 degrees in Vancouver under sunny skies, 19 degrees in Edmonton. Edmonton looking at the chance of showers tomorrow and a risk of a thunderstorm. Same thing for Calgary. Could see some showers tomorrow with a high of 24 degrees. Saskatoon, not much better, looking at showers with a risk of thunderstorm. 19 the high, 25 the high in Regina for Canada today with a mix of sun and cloud. Look at that weather for Winnipeg. Nice sunny skies for fireworks there, and 21 degrees the high. So let's hope that their skies remain clear in the evening. 30 degrees the high in Toronto, hot and humid there. Looking at rain, chance of showers, also risk of a thunderstorm. Same thing for Ottawa with a high of 29 there. 28 the high expected tomorrow. And Montreal with partly cloudy skies. On the East Coast, mainly sunny skies and beautiful weather for Fredericton, Halifax, and Charlottetown. We're looking at 28 the high for both Fredericton and Halifax. 25 in Charlottetown and a high of 21 degrees in St. John's, Newfoundland, with showers and some wind as well. So there you have it. That is your forecast. It's going to cost a lot more to host a Canada Day barbecue this year, with the cost of feeding 8 adults and 8 children pegged at a little more than $300. That's 17% higher than a year ago. The cost of a tank of gas and one night in a hotel is up nearly 44% from a year ago to about $320. Shares in Air Canada took a nosedive this morning after the airline announced that it's cutting summer flight schedules by more than 15%. Meanwhile, consumer rights advocates are demanding Air Canada compensate the hundreds of thousands of passengers booked on those summer flights. The airline's CEO says the cuts of more than 9,500 flights are due to strains on the global aviation system, potentially outside Air Canada's control. But that doesn't wash with consumer advocates who say customers are absolutely owed compensation under Canada's passenger rights charter. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 217 points on the day to finish at 18,861. The Dow was down 253 points to 30,775. The S&P 500 was down 33 points to 3785, and the Nasdaq was down 149 to 11,028. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $3.91 to $105.87 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 99 cents to $5.51 US. Gold was up 4 cents to $18.0723 US per ounce, and silver was down 1 cent to $20.26 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.65 per bushel, barley is at $9.25, canola $20, and corn is at $11.05 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.20 to $1.38. Feeder cattle were down $2.88 to $1.7360. Lean hogs were down 28 cents to $1.0913. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours at 77.67 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the city of Ottawa ramping up for Canada Day celebrations as supporters of this past winter's Freedom Convoy protest promise there will be a new wave of demonstrations through the summer, starting this weekend, particularly since hundreds of people already gathered today in a park in Ottawa for the final stretch of a march led by Canadian soldier James Topp, known for speaking out against COVID-19 vaccine requirements. Coming up next, a conversation with UCP leadership hopeful Danielle Smith. Keep it right here. Alberta's United Conservative Party leadership race is becoming somewhat of a crowded field these days. We're going to be interviewing as many of the candidates as we can to give you an idea of where they're coming from. Today, we are joined by Danielle Smith. She is the former leader of the Wild Rose Party and now a candidate in the UCP leadership. We're so happy to have her on. Welcome to Bridge City News today, Danielle. Great to have you here.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So Danielle, you're getting some praise at the same time, heaps of criticism over your promise to implement the Alberta Sovereignty Act. If you end up becoming premier, can you explain what this Sovereignty Act would actually do?
It's a pretty simple piece of legislation. It would just basically be reasserting our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and reasserting that the Constitution matters and that our provincial jurisdiction under Section 92 has to be respected. Unfortunately, we've got a federal government that is lawless. They have acted like the Charter doesn't exist, and they acted like the Constitution doesn't exist. And it's created a lot of uncertainty. We've had multiple projects that have been canceled because they can't see the way through to the finish line because they don't know how to get through the regulatory process, which has been made even more cumbersome by the federal government. This would just be asserting that we've got the right to develop our natural resources. It's been established in the Constitution. And we also have the right to protect our citizens from government overreach. And so it would be on a case-by-case basis that we would invoke it. But by declaring that we would pass the Alberta Sovereignty Act, we're just drawing a line in the sand. We're telling Ottawa to stay in its lane. And if they don't, we're going to push them out.
Okay, so Danielle, but critics are arguing that this is unconstitutional and that you can't really enforce it, considering that the federal government has its own tools to fight back, including withholding transfer funds from Alberta.
I guess what I would like is for Ottawa to treat us with the same respect as Quebec. And I'll give a few examples of the way in which provinces have asserted their constitutional rights. So, for instance, when the Emergencies Act was passed, and we now are beginning to see with the hearings that there was no justification for it, Quebec held an emergency session of their assembly and said, we're not going to enforce that here. We should have done the same. When they started seizing bank accounts, we should have encouraged people to move their money over to credit unions and said, sorry, That's against our constitutional rights. We are not enforcing that. I suspect that in the fall, we're going to see new mandates come in from the federal level. And I've heard loud and clear, especially from moms who are concerned about their kids. They do not want their kids forced back into any kind of restrictions. And if they put pressure on us, we'll just say, no, we're not going to enforce that. British Columbia has just recently said they're not going to enforce the laws on hard drugs. They for years didn't enforce the legislation around our criminal code legislation around possession and use of drugs, and now they've extended it to heroin and crystal meth and fentanyl with the government's blessing. So it seems to me we've got lots of precedent for different provinces to say, you know what, we have a different culture here. We want to enforce our laws in a different way here, and we're just asking for Alberta to be treated the same, and we're going to assert that we will be.
Okay, well, the UCP obviously seems to be deeply divided. So how do you propose to bring the party together?
There's I think a couple of issues that have caused us to lose support. One of them was the fact that we took a 180-degree turn from what we said we were going to do on vaccine mandates and vaccine passports. We'd gone so far as to change the public health legislation, saying we would never force anyone to get vaccinated, and then they ended up changing their mind in September. I think that caused a permanent lack of trust, and that would be one thing I would say is there's another way when we get into respiratory virus season to better protect our seniors. We won't be locking down again. We won't be firing people from their jobs because they've made a certain medical choice. In fact, I'd go so far as to amend the Human Rights Act to make sure that people cannot be discriminated against on the basis of medical choice or their political opinions. I think that will win back one portion. The other part of the problem has been all of these autonomy groups that have started up, whether it's the Buffalo Project or whether it's the Alberta Prosperity Project or the Wild Rose Independence Party, they're frustrated that we haven't acted on the mandate that we were given to end equalization. And from what I have seen over the past 20 years, we keep on arguing that we need to assert ourselves more like Quebec, collect our own income tax, collect our own pension, collect our own employment insurance, have our own police service. And we've got to start acting on those things, and we'll win that part of the party back as well. So this is why I've taken such a strong position that people want to see us act. They don't want to see us write stern letters. They don't want to see us continue to fight things through the courts that have been stacked by Ottawa appointees and seem to always go against us. They want to see us respect the Constitution, assert our rights, and demand to have the same respect as Quebec does in our federation. That's what we need to do to be able to win those votes back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Danielle, many people believe that Jason Kenney lost the confidence of the party over the way that he handled the COVID pandemic. So you're saying that under your leadership, there would be no provincial lockdowns, and you're saying no to mandatory vaccinations. But Kenney made similar promises and then gave in to the pressure, I guess, to change. So why should voters believe that with you it will be different?
I've been watching this unfold over the last 2 years, and I've been looking at the politicians who did have the courage to stand up in the face of pressure, like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Governor of South Dakota Kristi Noem. You can look at, I don't understand why there's been such suppression of the full range of discussion around what our medical options are, but we now know after 2 years that we do have options. Focused protection should always have been the approach. I think what we will see once we start looking at the jurisdictions around the world that did the best, and Alberta did pretty well, it was because we did a better job than other jurisdictions of making sure our folks in long-term care were protected. And so that's the approach that we take, not preventing kids from going to school or preventing people from going to restaurants or forcing them and coercing them to take vaccines. We've got to protect those who are most vulnerable. So make sure that we do that in our nursing homes, make sure that we've got effective therapeutics so that when somebody does get diagnosed with COVID, they can have a treatment to prevent them from deteriorating and going into hospital. That should have been the approach over the last year and a half, and that will be the approach when we get into the fall respiratory virus season.
Okay, so you obviously have very different ideas on how to handle the future pandemic issues should they arise, and how to deal with healthcare issues. Will MLAs be able to voice their opinions freely, or will they have to toe the line?
I believe in the individual autonomy of MLAs. I think part of what happens with caucus solidarity is when you have members pass policy on certain issues, you kind of expect that if you're going to run for the party, that you're going to endorse what the members say. there was no policy on emerging issues, especially around COVID. And instead, we didn't actually listen to our MLAs. If we had, we probably would have taken slightly different approaches in Calgary and Edmonton versus our rural areas. We saw in other jurisdictions like BC and Ontario that they did have a more nuanced approach with fewer restrictions in outlying areas. And if we had done that, I think we would have been able to have a better balance. So I would say that the only way you get that feedback is if MLAs are able to go out into their community, do town halls, bring that feedback back to caucus, and make sure that those senior leadership is listening to it. When I was a leader the last time, we always relied on our MLAs to tell us what was going on in the community. And it wasn't just a wild rose concept. That's how Ralph Klein and Peter Lougheed operated as well. They made sure that if they were going to pass something, that they had buy-in on the caucus. Because if you can't convince your caucus, you're not going to be able to convince the general public either. So I think that's been a missing piece, but we would certainly bring that back.
Okay, Albertans are frustrated with the federal government's position on oil and gas. So what would you do to create a better playing field for the energy sector?
I'm going to look at this from a constitutional perspective. If you look at our constitution, we have the exclusive right to develop our resources. And Ottawa has been interfering in our jurisdiction every step of the way. We recently got a judgment from the Court of Appeal saying that their Bill C-69, which is, we've been calling it the No More Pipelines Act, but it's kind of the No More Build Anything Anywhere Act. They've said that goes way too far. So we would push them back on that, continue with the court litigation. But more importantly, we've got to start acting independently. And I want people to be in the mindset of the fact that we do have the sovereign right to make these decisions over our resources. And what would we do if we didn't have Ottawa standing in our way? I would say that what we would do is we would start developing economic corridors with our partners. The one that is the furthest along in development is from Fort McMurray to Churchill. Partner with our First Nations, partner with Saskatchewan and Manitoba. We own most of that land anyway because it was transferred to us as Crown land. Develop a 10-kilometer wide right of way, build rail infrastructure, build water and electricity infrastructure, bring heating and broadband to those communities, and then also build oil and gas pipelines. And that would be the way that we would get to one port. We can also do something similar, working with our First Nations to get to Thunder Bay, to Tuktoyaktuk in the north, to Port of Prince Rupert. And that, to me, is the way that Alberta can assert itself as the leader on economic development in Western Canada. And I'm not going to wait until Ottawa approves that. I'm going to work with our partners and make sure that we start working on those corridors. We've been talking about it since the 1930s. It's time to start acting on it.
Okay, what about clean, green energy? Where do you see Alberta taking this sector?
We are so far advanced on carbon technology that allows us to capture CO2, bury it underground, and turn it into useful products like carbon nanofiber, which is a new construction material that could replace steel. We can use CO2 to make a more durable cement, for industrial minerals, for plastics, even alcohol. We also have the ability with our hydrogen economy that we're building out in the Edmonton area. That's going to be a major transformation of how we use our natural gas resources, capture the CO2, and then power all of our transportation vehicles with hydrogen. I've talked to companies that want to develop bitumen for asphalt. Once again, whether you're going to drive a regular car or a zero emissions car, you need roads to drive them on. There's also a movement in the oil sands. We've heard with the Pathways Net Zero project, they want to use small modular reactors to develop their resource so that it reduces the greenhouse gas footprint. And I also have a strategy for how we're going to recover all of our abandoned and suspended well sites. So I will put our environmental record up against any other oil producing jurisdiction in the world. And we are seeing a major transformation on how we use our resources that not only allow us to meet targets of energy security, but also energy affordability and be miles ahead of anyone else when it comes to environmental considerations. So I think we can sell that to the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Danielle, what about healthcare? Should we keep throwing money at it, or while wait times and physicians availability, they don't seem to be improving? So are you open to making some kind of private healthcare part of the equation, or what's your take on that?
The main thing we need to do, and I think people want to make changes to healthcare that fall under the umbrella of the Canada Health Act, and I'm perfectly happy to do that. The issue that we have in healthcare is we've got way too many administrators and bureaucrats who are preventing dollars from flowing down to the front line. So I want to return to having individual hospital boards with funding following the patient to those facilities to create a motivation for our hospitals to figure out ways that they can deliver more services and get rewarded for it. I also want to see health spending accounts. It's a kind of concept that many businesses use where they give their workers a little bit of money so that they can pay for all the things that aren't covered by healthcare. A lot of people that I've spoken with who want vaccine choice, they also use alternative medicine to keep themselves well. They use massage therapists and physiotherapy and chiropractic. They want to go to counselors and therapists and dietitians. None of that is covered right now. So let's help people with a little bit of money so that they can take care of their conditions at the front end so that we don't end up with so many people in hospital because of chronic conditions that have been allowed to get acute. We need a major transformation in who makes the decisions and who gets the money, and we've got to start squeezing out those management layers. So I'm prepared to do that transformation. We've got to get started on that too.
And then, of course, along that same vein, there's been a very tense relationship between the provincial government and doctors. So what would you do to change this situation?
We've got to realize our fight is not with the frontline operators. It's not the doctors that we should be fighting with, not the paramedics, not the nurses. They're just as frustrated, I think, with the level of bureaucratic interference and them being able to do their job. They're just as frustrated with the mismanagement. They're just as frustrated in not having the resources on the front line. So I think that we can have very positive relationship with our front line, get more dollars to them so that we can hire more doctors, we can attract more nurses back into the profession. We can make sure that our paramedics aren't sitting for an entire shift at hospital waiting rooms because they can't offload patients. These are all management issues. And so if we work together on solving those management issues, I am confident that we will repair a relationship with the front line and get better service for patients.
Okay, and then as far as law enforcement goes, do you believe, Danielle, that it's a good idea for Alberta to have its own police force? Is it worth the extra financial cost?
Yes, and I would start it immediately for a couple of reasons. We've had a lot of our frontline officers who've been fired from their jobs or put on leave because they refused to enforce some of the draconian decisions that have come down. I talked to an RCMP officer who was supposed to be on the crew that went and arrested Pastor Coates, and he refused to do that. That's the kind of person that I want in law enforcement, somebody who will value religious rights, someone who will value our charter rights. He also chose not to be vaccinated, and that is his right as a person who has bodily autonomy. So those are the kind of people that I want to see have jobs in law enforcement so that we can change the culture of law enforcement. One of the things that I hear frustration with in rural Alberta is the length of time it takes for our current officers to get out to calls when there's property damage or vandalism or theft. That would be a way in which our Alberta Provincial Police could augment the law enforcement. And then I also hear frustration in our big cities. We've got so many of our calls that are being responded to are mental health calls, are addiction calls, and we need a force that can better connect people who are in that kind of distress with the health system and the services that they need to be able to get clean from drugs so that they can get back into having a normal, independent life. And I think that if we train our Alberta Provincial Police officers in a high level of soft skills and negotiation and the ability to respond to those mental health calls, they'll be able to act as an additional service to where we're having problems in our big city centers. So I don't think there's any reason to delay. And I think that they'll do such a good job that we'll be able to expand that service out. But we've got to also get started by beginning that force so that we can take control over our own policing. And we know that we've got a police agency that responds to the priorities of Alberta.
So many more questions I'd like to get to, which we're running out of time, but I do want to fit one more in. Danielle, you have admitted that you made a mistake back when you were leading the Wild Rose Party and crossed the floor to the Progressive Conservatives. So what vibes are you getting from the current UCP members? Are they willing to forgive and forget and move on, or what are you getting?
Well, there's no question it was a mistake in 2015, and I ended up losing my nomination, and Jim Prentice ended up losing the election. I think people now can begin to see that part of what we were trying to do is to bring unity to the Conservative movement. I mean, we did it the wrong way, and the public wasn't ready for it at that time. But now I'm hearing is fear that the unity that we brought, that Jason Kenney and Brian Jean brought by bringing the party together, is going to bust apart. I don't want to see that happen. I know Brian Jean doesn't want to see that happen. It's why both of us have jumped into this race, is that we want to keep this movement together. Both of us gave up an awful lot for unity, and I believe that the UCP project is one that's worth saving. I think that we can be unified as a conservative movement, and if we do bust apart, we're going to end up with another 4 years or 8 years of NDP government, and I don't want to see that. When the NDP came in, investment in the province stopped. We had a ton of job loss. We saw an escalation in spending, an escalation in debt, and we're just now back into surplus. I want to make sure that we can maintain some conservative values in how we manage those resources on behalf of taxpayers, and also do a better job of delivering those frontline care programs. So that's the reason why I'm in the race, is to be a force of unity, and I'm glad to be getting some of the positive feedback that I am, because I think it's time to make a change so we can put Alberta first.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Danielle. Good luck in your campaign.
My pleasure.
Well, golf is either one of the most enjoyable and relaxing games on the planet, or one of the most frustrating. It all depends on your mindset. So we are here at the Lethbridge Country Club to try and get some great golf tips. I'm joined by Eric Porter, who is the PGA of Canada head professional here at Lethbridge Country Club. Eric, thanks so much for joining us today on Bridge City News.
Thanks for having us. Looking forward to having a conversation and hopefully give a few tips for our golfers to make this game a little bit more enjoyable.
Oh my gosh, and that's what it's all about. So let's get right into that. The golf season is open. Has it been busy so far?
We've been busy. We are, now that we're, weather's picking up, we're definitely seeing more traffic. We're definitely not at our COVID numbers that we were in 2020 and 2021, just with more activities going on. People are finding other things to do besides golf, but we still are quite busy. And now that the weather's picking up, we'll have more of our fair weather golfers showing up soon.
Yeah, and Eric, of course, you mentioned COVID. So have you found that the club has picked up a lot since the COVID restrictions have been dropped?
Yes, for sure. Last year was our record number of years that we ever hosted. Once again, there wasn't a whole lot of activity for people to do, so this was a great social outing. You got some fresh air, met with your friends, and got some exercise. So we were busier than we have been, and we hope to continue having more and more people come out and enjoy our facility.
I'm sure they will, because it's a wonderful game sometimes when you're not frustrated. So let's get right into that. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see golfers make?
So one of the most common mistakes that we see golfers make is definitely overswinging. So everyone wants to hit the ball long and far, but when we swing too hard, that's when things go out of whack. So just, something like just slowing down your tempo. Instead of trying to hit it 400 yards, let's just try to hit it down the fairway so we have a clear next shot to the green instead of being in the trees. Some other mistakes that we do see is players are using wrong equipment. This game is hard enough already. Now with custom fitting, being able to fit players to exactly to their spec makes the game much more enjoyable and makes it much more easy for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you brought up equipment. We're standing here next to your golf bag.
Yep.
So is there certain equipment that the players, the golfers should be looking at specifically?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So when it comes to each golfer has totally different swings and swing speeds, body shapes, even just their mobility, injuries, so on and so forth. So seeing any PGA professional for a custom fitting would definitely improve the game. We have shafts that are designed to hit the ball lower or higher. We have clubs that are, designed to hit the ball straighter. And just the equipment has changed so much, especially in the last 10 years. And with the technology that we utilize fitting clubs with TrackMan, Flight Scope, we're really able to dial in any golfer. And a lot of our higher handicap golfers are, I'm custom fit, my swing's never the same, what does it matter? still we could fit you, and we can make something that's going to make the game more enjoyable and just hit more consistent golf shots.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything you can show us here in your bag that?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the most important things when fitting irons is what's called lie angle. So to demonstrate that here, Jeanette, I'm just going to grab a club. So when we're doing custom club fitting for irons, as a club fitter, I'm just going to put this on my club to represent the golf ball. So when we fit a golf club, we want the middle of the club hitting the ground first. That's going to give our best possibility of hitting down our target line. Something as clubs being misfit, if the toe digs in, you can see how the club now moves over to the left. So my ball is going to start more in the left direction. If the heel hits in first, the club's going to close. So something as simple as just getting a proper lie angle on your golf clubs will give you a much greater chance of hitting your intended target.
So Eric, speaking about equipment, how important is it to get the right equipment for yourself? And what about club lengths? Do these lengths have to be a certain?
Yeah,
clubs have to be a
definitely.
certain length?
Once again, every golfer is unique based on height, length of arms, hand size. So definitely, if you're going to be investing in golf clubs, I definitely recommend coming and seeing a PGA of Canada professional. You'll be able to get properly fit. So once again, we have the proper shaft length, the proper shaft flex, the proper characteristics of, do we need to hit it higher, do we need to hit it lower, and grip, same thing. Depending on your hand size, that's going to dictate the size of your grip. And there's also other factors that may change your grip size as well. For example, seniors with arthritis, we want to get them in a great big grip so they're not squeezing so hard. So just little things like that. Once again, all equipment is fit directly to each individual, and I 100% recommend seeing a PGA of Canada professional to get properly fit. It will make the game much more enjoyable.
Any tips on how to deal with those windy days, especially here in Lethbridge?
There are definitely some tips that we could utilize and put in our bag to make the wind a little bit more friendly when we are playing. And when it comes to basically hitting a ball lower, if I was hitting a stock golf shot here with this 7-iron, my ball position would be basically in the middle of my stance. I'd make a full swing, my hands would finish up high like this. If we were trying to hit a low golf shot or in the wind, one thing we definitely recommend is club one to two clubs up. And then simply just by placing the ball position back in the stance, what's going to happen is the club's going to hit the ground. We're going to make a shorter follow through, and we're going to be able to hit the ball on a lower trajectory so the wind won't have as much factor. And like I said, definitely club up. A lot of golfers, when it is windy, the biggest mistake that most amateur golfers make is they get up there and, well, the wind's blowing in my face, I'm just going to swing harder. That's the worst thing you could do. You create more spin on the ball, and the wind is going to prevent more curvature.
Most of us don't have the greatest swing in the world, Eric. So what's your advice on picking up your swing, getting a better swing?
So to get a better swing, the first thing I'd focus on is finishing balanced. If we're able to finish a swing balanced, we're not over swinging. But most golfers, like I said, we're trying to hit the ball so far. If you're trying to hit the ball that far, take an extra club, swing less, so you'll be able to finish nice and balanced. So many golfers that we see on the golf course, you know, they swing and they're falling all over the place. So when we hit a golf shot, we want to make sure that it's just back and we're able to hold that finish, that we're nice and balanced. If we're moving all over the place, we're just over swinging, and that's going to cause a lot of misstruck shots.
And then, of course, Eric, as we mentioned many times, it's a very frustrating game. So how do we not give in to frustration and keep our mind set calm? Any tips on that?
So first off, most golfers need to realize we're going out there for fun with our friends or family or, you know, working crew. We're not going out there playing for millions of dollars like the PGA and LPGA professionals. So the biggest thing is, it is a game. Go in there with an open mindset of go out there, try to have fun, don't worry about your score. And one piece of advice my dad always gave me is, don't worry about your last shot, worry about your next shot. You can't change anything about your last shot. So if you hit a bad one, don't be down on yourself and, you know, letting it dictate the rest of your day. Just worry about hitting a good next shot and, you know, forget about that bad shot. There's nothing you can do about it. So just move on.
Great advice. I love that. How much does flexibility and physical strength play into a better game?
Flexibility is huge. The more flexibility that you'll have, the more turn, the more club head speed you'll create. Obviously, if we hit the ball further, it's going to be much easier on our next shot to hit the ball closer. So definitely, you know, flexibility, doing any kind of yoga or anything like that will lead to more turn and essentially more distance.
That might actually help with your mindset as well.
And it will definitely calm you and keep your mind good too.
So Eric, a lot of people want to get their families involved. What's a good age to get your child involved in the game of golf?
So a great age for juniors to get involved is around that 4-5-year-old age. At that age, they have good mobility skills. Their attention span's a little bit more focused. In our junior program, we allow juniors as young as 4 years old to take part in our junior program. But once again, attention span's a little shorter, keeping them focused. But 4 or 5 is definitely a great age for them to start taking up the game.
So Eric, any final thoughts on why people should get involved in golf?
First of all, the game is a sport where you could play at any age. You could start as young as 4, you could play till you're 90. You get great exercise, good social event. For young professionals and golfing parties, we have a lot of corporate golf and stuff like that taking place. So it's definitely a good sport to take up for exercise, social, and once again, walking in a nice park like this, it's pretty hard to have a bad day.
Well, why don't we set you up on the fairway and you can show us how the pros do it.
Perfect. I'd love to hit a shot, so let's get set up. One of the first things you're going to notice when I'm teeing up the golf ball with the new technology with a high, deep face, teeing the ball nice and high. I get my ball position forward in the stance, nice wide stance, look at my target, nice low backswing. We want to finish nice and balanced, hold that finish, and hopefully hit it right down the middle of the fairway. Folks, we're going to talk about bunker play. One of the biggest mistakes amateur golfers make when they're hitting a bunker shot is they get set up and they decel. So it looks like this, they take club back and we stop. So we do not want to stop. To demonstrate what happens when we decel, I'm going to get up there, I'm going to look at my target, take club back, and I decel. What we want to do when we're in the bunker is we want to make sure that we make a big, long follow through to get the ball elevated in the air. So I get set up, open up my club face, take the club back, follow through, and we could snug the ball up nice and close to the pin.
So does the decel just mean that like you stop because the ground
you just
hits
stop.
You? So
yeah.
what happens, like, so you just keep going even though the ground stops you? That's what you're saying?
Exactly. We want to, what it basically is, Jeanette, is people just have anxiety and they're like, oh, I don't want to hit it past the green. So it's like, oh, I'm going to stop. So the key is, once again, just to get the follow through.
Okay, so Eric, why don't you give us some great tips on putting? That can be frustrating just as well as being on the fairway.
Yes, for sure. So just a few things with putting. One thing we definitely want to do before we're hitting any putt is we want to assess the green that we're hitting on. We want to see, are we downhill, are we uphill, is the ball going to break to the left, is the ball going to break to the right? So just doing some general studies is going to make it a higher percentage of making our putt. After we pick a line, we need to make sure that we have, good weight. When we're making a putt, one tip that I would definitely recommend is never leave a putt short. I've never holed a putt that I've left short, so always get the ball to the hole to give it an opportunity of going in. And in the longer putts, it's not so much of getting the ball in the hole, it's just trying to get it within, a 3-foot circle would be a great putt. So get your practice swings in, get a good feel, create that tempo and speed, and just go up there and put a good confident stroke on it.
What do you mean by leaving it short?
So by leaving it short is, if I was hitting a putt from right here and I hit a putt and the ball landed right there, the ball had no chance of going in the hole. where if I hit the ball and it went past, at least it had an opportunity to go in. And the other thing that if you're paying attention, the ball goes past the hole, on your comeback putt, you're going to have an idea of what the ball is going to do coming back. So once again, always make sure you get the ball to the hole, and always study when the ball goes past so you have a better chance of making your comeback putt.
Eric, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope some golfers got some tips here that make the game more enjoyable.
Yes, hopefully all of our games will improve. Eric Porter is the PGA of Canada head professional here at Lethbridge Country Club. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.